Okay, good morning. We have a big crowd today. This is the second session of Track D. My name is Seunghwan Kim, Professor of Department of Physics of POSTECH. It certainly is my pleasure to welcome you all to this session to serve as a chair for the session. Now, the talks will be given mostly in English, so Q&As. But however, if there are questions from the floor in Korean, we may mix a little bit of Korean with English later. But in any case, the entire session will be run bilingually with the help of simultaneous translators. So today, we are going to talk about the future we are facing with fast-changing technologies and current challenges, and education, how to prepare for the future. Many picture the future with, say, robots, IoTs, more intelligent, more connected than ever, surpassing the entire planet and taking over some jobs from human in a wide range of areas in society. Still, there must be a room for human. Questions are, how can we best prepare us and next generation for this future? So can we educate students and young people for jobs that may not exist yet? So what are the core capabilities and capacities of young people and that we have to nurture for the future? Well, so also more practically, how can we measure, monitor, and strengthen these capabilities? So this session consists of two presentations by distinguished speakers who can provide some insights into these questions. So each speech will last for about 30 minutes, and we will take questions from the floor afterwards. So please write down the questions on the papers on your seat and hand them over to our staff. So during the session, so before the Q&A sessions. Now let me introduce our speakers. This is Professor Daniel Zajfman, so who is president of the world-famous research and educational organization, Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel. Let's give a big welcome. Next to him, this is Natalie Seitz, Senior Advisor of Organizational Change from NASA at Johnson Space Center. So I suppose you all know about the fame of the NASA, which is trying to push us to the Mars. So let's welcome her. So our first speaker is Professor Daniel Zajfman. He's a physicist like myself at the Department of Particle Physics of Weizmann Institute of Science. So he's serving as president of this institute for 10 years. And he's also serving as the chairman of HAMDA, which is a School for Science Education, and many other titles, right? So please. Let's give a big hand to Professor Zajfman.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming to this session. In fact, when I was invited to speak, I was asked to speak about the secrets of successful Israeli science education. The question marks were not in the original title. I just add them. I add them because I'm not sure they are secrets, and frankly, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure it's really successful. But what always amazes me is what seems to be successful from outside in any country. I mean, when you look at someone else, some other country seems to be very successful. As you know, from inside, you're always complaining. And so it's always a very relative way of measuring success. And really what I would like to talk about, a few topics. One of them is, can we really measure the success of an education system? And because I'm a scientist and I'll deal mostly with science, I will, of course, focus only on science education. Not that the rest is not important, it's just that's what I know. What I like to do is to really try to see if we can measure it, and even more, if we actually try to really measure it, and we're not destroying it. You know, it's a bit like quantum mechanics. When you try to measure things in quantum mechanics, you destroy them. And I have sometimes a feeling that when we try to assess and measure the value of education and science education, and we try to be very precise in this assessment, we actually destroy the education itself. And I'll show you some examples, and I'll try to convince them, to convince you that this thesis is actually right. And I'm talking not only as the president of the Weizmann Institute, but really as someone with many years of experience within science education, different organizations that are under the umbrella of the Weizmann Institute of Science, which is a scientific research organization, are dealing with science, and I'm just listing some of them. And I've been the chairman of all these organizations for several years, dealing with mostly kids that are aged between 15 to 18 and are curious about science, want to study physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology. And the question, of course, is how do we provide them the best possible knowledge, but also how do we increase the number of kids getting to these studies, because it is important for all our countries. We know that the future of the economy of our countries will mostly be based on science and not on natural resources, or as I say, the secret of the success of a country is not located under the ground, but 1.7 meters above the ground. And we have to engage ourselves in putting a lot of effort to grow this part. And so what I'd like to report is what did we learn about science education over these years. The first thing I'd like to say some things about excellence, and the question, can we measure it? So if you go to the Olympic Games and you try to measure excellence, it's really easy. Because for any kind of sport you're talking about, there is a well-defined set of rules. And if it's sprinting, then it's time. And if you run the 100 meters in the shortest time, then you're the winner. I mean, it is so easy to describe who is the best. You're number one in a competition, or you're number one worldwide. If you run the fastest, it's very easy. And you can see, this is, by the way, a graph of the 100-meter sprint time. You can see how excellence is being driven by moving in the 1880, running 100 meters in about 10.8 seconds, to today 9.6 or something like this of a seconds. You can see an interesting drop here, and you even wonder what happened here exactly in sport, but never mind. One of the questions you could ask yourself is, what really drives these people to run fast? I mean, is it really the fact that they want to stand on the podium and have the gold medal to be the first one? Or is it something a bit more internal to these individuals that push them from inside to be the first one? And I really believe that most of these individuals, it is not only the fact that they want to stand on the podium and have a medal that push them. There's some kind of internal drive. Because to be able to run the 100 meters at that speed, or to swim as fast as the swimmers are swimming today, it requires huge amount of work, doing years and years and years of training. And you don't go through all this hard work only to be standing on the podium. You do it because something internally to you is pushing you to do so. And that's true in sport, and in fact, it's true in all kinds of things we human beings are trying to do. When we want to be the best, it's not about what you're trying to achieve, it is about what we want from inside, or from ourselves. And excellence is very often something that comes from inside. Another way to measure excellence, and because I've come here from an airplane, I thought that this would be a good idea, is to try to estimate what are the best airlines in the world. I'm sorry Korean Air is not in this list, though I fly Korean Air was not bad at all. But this is someone here, or some organization is setting up a set of parameters that are defined by someone else, believing that these are the standards of the industry, and then they rank this by asking questions, and they end up with a list of the best airlines in the world. One has to agree that this type of ranking is very different than the first ranking I showed. The first one was very absolute, it's time, and it's perfectly measured, and the first one is the first one, and the second is the second. Well, here, it's a bit of what you think about it. And the first one, the second one, the third one, perhaps even number 10, are as good as anyone else. So it's not too much the ranking here that matters, it's the fact that you're within the group of, and trying to rank these different airline industries or airline companies according to specific numbers, can be really a problem, because someone else actually setting a set of parameters and pushing the industry within that set of parameters. But yet you can learn something from this industry. What you learn most is the following. It's the fact that, it's the fact that there's a bottom line to the excellence. And the bottom line is that if you're working in a company and you achieve the highest standard as a service provider, whatever you're doing soon will become the minimum standard for the customer. So it doesn't take a long time for outstanding services or for someone to be outstanding to actually become second league. If you want to be excellent, you have to work hard to always be there. It's not enough to be once there and then to rest. It is a constant work. And that's why basically excellence can never be a goal. Because if the goal is to be excellent, you're going to stop once you reach it, and that's not a good idea. Excellence is basically a road. It is a journey that you're taking, and you have to work it all the time. Because whatever you achieve is going to be second in a few years. Just like, in the 100 meters Olympics, you're going to be the first. 5 years later, you're not going to be there if you're not training and continue to train. So you learn something about being excellent. One can even go further and talk about, for example, ranking of universities. This is even worse because someone in the world, a group of people somewhere, be that in Shanghai or in the US or the Times Magazine or whatever you want, making their mind about what are the right parameters to be, or that along which we need to rank universities, and then they provide a ranking. But that's a very dangerous ranking because the people who are actually doing the ranking have no idea how universities are actually supposed to work. And if you really believe in this ranking, then you're going to move your whole university within that list. And what will happen at the end of the day is that everybody will do the same thing because everyone will compete on the same basis. And that's actually dangerous. That is actually a killing factor for universities because everyone will try to do things. And so by trying to measure excellence and providing ranking, what you're doing sometime, depending exactly what you're ranking, is you can kill it. You can kill it because you kill innovation, you kill outside-of-the-box thinking, you kill original thinking. If someone works in university and is very different than anyone else, it cannot be ranked within all these lists. It is just exceptional. It thinks in a different way. So can we really measure these things? And my thesis is that it's very hard to measure. So I was asked to talk about the excellence of the Israeli system. And I was very surprised when I was asked this by my Korean friends, because if you look at the ranking, for example, of mathematics, for high school children, what you learn is actually Korea is way, way, way better than Israel. You can see that on the list. Israel actually way down, and Korea is way better. By the way, the United States, which, as you know, provide among the best universities in the world, actually even below that. What you see here is a very good example of how ranking is measuring one set of skills, but the reality of what we want from our kids to do is something totally different. If this list was correct, then Vietnam, which is in the middle of the scale, would be better in terms of science than the United States. And as you know, it is not the right way. Now, you could argue it is all about money. That's not true. It is not. It's about people. It's about education. And it's about how you organize these things and what you expect from your people. So I'm just showing you this list because it shows you that while Korea or China or Singapore and Hong Kong are really amazing results as far as measuring the results of what all kids know at the age of 18 when they're finishing high school, the question is, what do they do with it? And that's not being ranked here. And the reason this doesn't really work, this ranking, and the reason we should not really believe too much in this ranking, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying we have to be very careful, is because it doesn't really measure what you expect from our kids to be. It measures what they know, but it doesn't measure what they will be able to do with what they know. And that's a very major difference. As an example, even though Israel is very, very low in the scale, Israel today is number 2 in terms of innovations and high-tech in the world. The second most innovative cities in the world is Tel Aviv, just after Silicon Valley. We have the highest number of companies on NASDAQ after the US and China, and we have a very small country. We have the highest number of scientists and engineers per capita in the workforce in the world, and we have the largest number of company of startup in the world as well. And that is being achieved with kids that they're not the best in the world in terms of science and mathematics. And the ranking in physics, by the way, would be the same in chemistry. So all that to show you that just ranking and being number 1 is far from being enough. I would recommend to be number 1, it's fine, but I would not recommend you to trust that because you're number 1, you're going to be successful. I would, of course, not recommend you to be number 150 because that would not allow you to be successful as well. But the ranking is very murky, and it's not precise, and you should not fight for it. Another example is, for example, the impact of science in the world. This is an interesting graph that shows you how science is impacting the world by measuring what is called on the vertical scale the citations by GDP, and on the horizontal scale the GDP per capita. And you can see all these countries, and the higher on the scale, the higher impact you have per capita, per use of dollar that you have. This is where Israel is located. We're not a very rich country, but we have a very high impact per capita. You can look at where the US is. It's a very rich country, and of course, their impact per capita is lower. It doesn't mean that they don't have good science. They have extraordinary science. Per capita, it is lower. And that's another way of measuring it. And you can see again that the correlation between this map and the education or the ranking of education is very murky. It's very, very weak. It is not 100% correlation. Something else is involved in, after we educate our kids, to allow them or to educate them to do something with what they're doing. So what I would like to talk is, what is it that makes this more successful than just knowing something about mathematics and physics? The first and most important part, which is something which is very difficult to change, and I sometimes even do not recommend to change it, is actually the fact that the culture of a society, the culture of a country, is critical to the way we actually use what we have learned. We could have kids going exactly the same schools and studying exactly the same topics in physics and mathematics in different countries, knowing exactly the same answers and being able to succeed in this exam exactly the same way. They will do totally different things because the country has a different culture. And that's perfectly okay, by the way. And I think that's the beauty of the system, because it provides a lot of different options. And as I said in my lecture yesterday, what you can do in Korea, we can do in Israel. And what we do in Israel, you cannot do here. And I think it's fantastic, because it makes the world much richer. So people ask me, so what is the difference that you see? And I'll tell you in one single cartoon how I see the difference between Europe and perhaps even Korea and Israel. And that's probably the way to look at this. In Europe and Korea, you're very well organized, and you go by stage. Everything you do is really organized with a lot of respect for the process itself. While in Israel, we have zero respect for processes. We don't even understand what process means. We work as a group. Everyone is trying to compete with everyone else. There's very little order in the system, and it's way more chaotic. And it seems that more chaotic is not as good as well-organized. But if you want innovation, in fact, chaos is way better than organization. Organization tends to kill innovative ideas. Chaos, up to some limit, of course, tends to enhance the ability of people to provide their own ideas. And that's why, basically, the innovative culture is based on risk-taking and failure management, on something which is very important, and I call this little respect for authorities. Yes, we all have a boss, and yes, there are many people above us. The question is how much the environment in which you're working allow you to say whatever you have on your mind, even if it's stupid and not right. And how much patience the system has to listen to you and take sometimes the right ideas and adopt it so that it will be actually the idea that will be working. Working and living in a multicultural environment is also critical. If everyone is born in the same place, speak the same language, and believe in the same thing, then at the end of the day, you get only one output. If you work in an area, in a region, or in a place where you have a lot of different people, multicultural environment, you will have way more people providing very different ideas. And if you can take if you have the patience to listen to them, and even though they know the same physics and the same mathematics, they will have an approach to the same problems with different answers. And that's very important. And the last word is a Hebrew word that I have no idea how to translate to any other language, but in Hebrew it's called chutzpah. I've learned in Korea there's a book about chutzpah, and perhaps you know better than I do what it means, but chutzpah means talking about things you don't even understand, this is exactly what I'm doing right now. So chutzpah is something where people take for themselves granted the opportunity or the idea that they know best than anyone else. It is, by the way, most of the time totally wrong. But in 1% of the case, it is right. And if you can listen to this 1%, you're going to gain so much. And so having the freedom to behave like this is very important. So why am I talking about this? Because I'm talking about this because really, when we try to teach our kids specific topics, we're putting them in a position where they believe that this is the most important thing they need to know. But the truth is, as we all know, that what we are doing today is preparing students for jobs that don't yet exist. I mean, we don't know what will be the job in 20 years from now. And also, we have no idea which type of technologies they will be using because they've not been invented today. I mean, you know, we're using technologies today that our parents had no idea they would be invented. And how do we think about that for the future of this? And also, we want them to solve problems that we don't even know are problems today. So how do we educate them? What type of education do we want to provide them? The first thing I'd like to say is something about grades and rewards. I mean, we all like to grade our students. We like to be sure that they're the very best one. And every school and every classroom and every teacher will grade his class. And that's, of course, important, but there's a very big danger to it. The danger, by the way, can be seen even in workplaces. For example, grading, which means also providing reward or bonuses, can be very efficient if you have low-skilled workers which are doing mechanical work. For example, if you're working in a place where your employees need to put screws into a wheel, and you measure the quality of their work by the number of screws they're putting into that wheel, clearly paying them more if they have more screws is a reward that they deserve. And there's a good chance that if you use this, you'll have more people putting more screws in the wheel. But if you work in an organization where you want them to be actually high-skilled workers, which provide new ideas and are innovative and breaking the rules in a way, then in fact rewards can be very dangerous. Why? Because rewards will be based on an upfront decision of what the goal is all about. If you succeed to do A, B, and C, you'll get a reward. But perhaps doing A, B, C is not the right thing to do, and that employee would like to do D, which is actually better than what you've been thinking about. And if he does D, which is way better than A, B, and C, then you're not going to reward him or her, and it's going to be, in your eyes, a failure, but in fact, his or her idea is actually way better. So by providing a bonus to someone who is highly skilled and needs to develop and provide solutions to highly complicated problems, by telling them what the solution is ahead of time, you're going to kill innovation. And so that's why you can see it in schools as well. You can see that in many workplaces. For high-skilled workers, for people working in high level of science and engineering, bonuses might not be a good idea, especially if you define them ahead of time, because they will put everyone again on the same track, working with exactly the same type of thinking, and not providing out of the box thinking. So even for kids, grades are important. You have to provide them, but it's not everything. There is, of course, advantages to grade. They create some competition, and excellence is driven by competition. It measures the knowledge in somehow, and it is important. It's easy to rank, as we have seen. It also teaches deadlines. You have an exam tomorrow, you better be ready, and that's important as well. I mean, not everything is out of the blue. Sometimes there's a well-defined deadlines, and we need to teach our kids to be there. Exams that are ranked teach them this kind of thinking, and it trains memory. But there are disadvantages. It's hard to probe understanding by just looking at grades. It kills, as I said, innovative thinking. It teaches conformism. There's only one right answer to any question. That's true in school, but as you know in life, there's very rarely one right answer to a single question. There are many possible answers, and they're all right. The question is which one you choose and is right for your organization, which, by the way, given the same problem, can be a totally different answer in a different organization. So if you teach them conformism, the fact that there's only one answer to one single question, you're killing curiosity, and of course, you don't measure passion. And passion, as you'll see in a minute, is a very important tool for driving kids to do something with what they've learned. So grades are important if you deserve them, but the goal of today's good education system is to provide kids only tools that they'll be able to contribute back to the society 20 years later. And so measuring what they know today is not the guarantee that they'll be able to really provide what they know 20 years from now. And that, of course, makes the system very complicated, because evaluating something 20 years later provides feedback, which is usually too late. And I agree, it is complicated. It is not easy. You cannot just go and look at the PISA ranking and say, that's a very good school, and this one is a bad school. I disagree with this. It's not true. You cannot do that. So in the last part, I'd like to tell my opinion about what makes an excellent scholar. I mean, how do we improve this? And again, I'm not trying to say you should not teach them good physics and mathematics and chemistry and deep and knowing this. It is important. You have to. It's not enough. It's knowledge, curiosity, and passion that are important. Knowledge, I think we have understood what it is, though I'd like still to say a few words about it. Knowledge seems to be important, but it is, in my opinion, less and less important. 20, 30, 40 years ago, if you didn't know the answer to a question, you would go and ask someone who was an expert in the field, and he had the knowledge. He was being paid because he knew that. And these people were highly respected. This is why, by the way, we were respecting our teachers very much 40 years ago. They knew, we didn't. Today, we don't respect our teachers so much, and the reason is because the role of the teachers has changed. If the only thing they know is to know better than their kids, then I know systems that know way better than anyone, and that's, of course, the internet. So just understanding, just knowledge, the value of it is just decreasing over time, and the more you look in the future, less important knowledge will be, because if you can read it anywhere from everywhere at any given moment, then what's the value of this? What is reachable at any given moment has not much value. And that's what is happening with knowledge. Again, I'm pushing a bit the limit, maybe exaggerating, but it's to give you a feeling of what knowledge means. And also, we do not need, or we need to be careful about the difference between knowledge and what I call understanding. If you're French, by the way, you know that very well. I mean, wine, we know what it is. Only those who understand something know why it needs to be stored in a horizontal way. And that's, of course, the difference between knowledge and understanding. And understanding really is a bit more complex than just knowledge. And it's a mental construct that is an abstraction mode which is made by the human mind to make sense of many distinct pieces of knowledge. So you know many things. The question is, can you put all these things together and understand what it means? And that's a process we don't teach our kids. We don't show them that knowing answers to questions, there's a continuation to it. How we can use all these answers to make something new, we can only do it if we really understand the meaning of these problems. And that is transparent to these kids. We don't go into these details. So knowledge or information is now widely available, and it's not really a problem in my opinion. It's easy to provide knowledge. I don't think we should dwell into this very much. And very much important, or way more important actually, is curiosity and passion on top of the knowledge, because this is what allows you to transform your knowledge into action. So curiosity. Curiosity is something very interesting because we're all born with it. In fact, it's part of the evolution theory. If you read carefully Charles Darwin, people believe that Charles Darwin say that the strongest actually win, but that's not true. If you read the text carefully, he says that the species most likely to survive are not, in fact, the fittest, the strongest, or the most powerful. That's not true. It is the species most prepared to change as the environment changes. I think it is amazing that someone more than 100 years ago could make a statement like this, because this is exactly what we are facing today. Environment is changing all the time, and those who are going to be successful are not the strongest, and not the fittest, or in our language, not those who know better. It's those who are most prepared to the change. It's very clear in animal world. It is also clear in the human species. And what allows you to be more prepared is your curiosity. If you learn about the world around you all the time, you're curious about what is happening, you're going to see the changes before anyone else, and you're going to be prepared for it. And so we go back to an old theory, which is very correct today. And curiosity is part of evolution theory. Of course, the problem is when we go to school, we kill it. We kill curiosity because we want our kids to answer the questions of today. And we are just like any other animal. We will have a survival advantage if we demonstrate or if you enhance the curiosity in our kids, and the question how we do this. So how do you stimulate that curiosity and that passion? I would say the following, and this is what we have been doing. Instead of just teaching problems and answers, which we do as well, we ask all these mathematical questions and physics questions, we also do the following. In the classroom, we introduce a lot of conflict. We provide choices. We violate expectations. We teach contradictions, complexity, and uncertainties. We create challenges, and we never use grades as a threat. Once you have taught the kids the basic of physics, the next step is to show them that actually there are problems the way it seems it doesn't work, that what you believe seems to be easy is very complex. So for example, we know that in biology, you take two very simple phenomena that we understand very well. You put them together, it's called biocomplexity. The system gets crazy totally. And you thought you know the basis of it. But the result is totally different. And all kids are lost immediately because they thought they understood. They didn't. They knew something, but they had no understanding. And only if we teach them this type of thinking, if we provoke them to show them that what they know is not enough, but need to be transformed by all these kind of contradictions and complexity, and show them problems where even in science there are more than one answer for a given question. We will educate them along the years that to be humble with their knowledge and to trust their feeling about what they can do with it. And I think that's as important as the knowledge. And that will not be measured by any type of exam or any type of test, certainly not an international one that tried to measure the feeling and the ambitions and the curiosity of people in different countries, because that will be very different. And I think that's the beauty of it. So that's about curiosity. Passion is also a very important part. And the question is, how do you stimulate passions in your kids? It is an emotion, by the way. It feels enthusiasm. It's a desire for something. And my experience has been that passion has been an amazing tool for solving problems. Sometimes when I see people with a huge amount of knowledge and no passion, and people with not knowing what the situation, with a huge passion to solve it, better choose the passionate one versus the knowledgeable one, because they are the one who are going to work very hard to solve it. And the question is, what is this passion about? How do you stimulate it? The first thing I'd like to say is there's no way you can light a fire of passion in your kids, in your students, if the teacher itself or herself has not passion to begin with. And again, that changed the role of a teacher. We used to think of a teacher as someone who knows something, that the only job is to transfer the knowledge to the kids. Well, I disagree with it. If the teacher doesn't know something, Google knows it. But passion is not in Google. It's only if you are passionate about what you're teaching that you can engage your kids to be passionate as well. And what we need are not anymore teachers that know very well their curriculum. We need teachers that are passionate about the topic. And as an example, in science, what we do to find passionate teachers of physics, we don't hire teachers. We hire scientists. All teachers are scientists, because scientists are passionate about what they're doing. I'm a physicist. I love physics. Don't ask me why, but I just believe this is the most beautiful science in the world. Maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't matter. And I can talk to these kids and show them that this is very amazing. And I can do that not because I know a lot of physics, but because I'm a physicist. And the same thing will happen with a chemist and a biologist and a mathematician. And so if you really want to educate kids into science, we better change the model and not have just teachers, but having scientists. And I do believe it is the role of the scientist to teach kids as well, not only to do research, but to be present in the schools and to change the way kids are learning. And the only people who can do that are us. Same thing, by the way, if you want to teach history. You have to have an historian in front of the classroom. And I know it's a big change in society, but that's what we need to do. This is the only way we can fire a passion in our kids. A few more words about passion. Think about this. The way to really recreate this or create this into the mind of our kids is, first of all, to provide them autonomy. Independence is the only way people will be passionate about something. If they are under pressure all the time and they have a boss that looks at them or a teacher that looks at them all the time, then there will be no passion because they'll be looking above at the teacher for answers. Autonomy, independence is part of what passion is all about. That's what drives innovation, by the way. No innovation without independence. Mastery, the desire to be better at doing something. That creates personal satisfaction. Ask yourself why people have hobby. I know people who are not good students, they're not good employees, but they have an amazing hobby. And when they go into their hobby, they're just amazing. They just do that in an amazing way. And by the way, the hobby can be really, in my opinion, boring. For example, I know people who love collecting stamps. I know there are not many stamps anymore because we all use emails, but still, people are still sending envelopes with stamps. And as you know, there are people collecting stamps. Ask yourself why. I mean, why are people spending time adjusting all these stamps all the time? It's a passion. And you don't understand why, but it burns into their own body. And you look at people like this, you realize they could do something amazing because they're passionate. You have to use their skills where they are good at and try to focus their skills into what we need. And that's what we call mastery. Last but not least, an important one is to provide a sense of purpose, the desire to make a contribution. Everyone, even if he knows a lot, it's not enough if you don't provide that feeling that these people want to make a contribution. One of the best examples I know is Wikipedia. It's a very strange phenomenon. Wikipedia, as you know, is a huge website on the internet which is driven by millions of people providing for free in an anonymous way their own knowledge to the whole world. Why are they doing that? Nobody's being paid here, or very few people are being paid. They're not the one writing. There are people who constantly look at these pages and update them in a minute so that they are up to date. They're not being paid for it. Nobody asked them to do that. And you can use that knowledge for free. And you don't even know who they are, so you cannot even provide them a grade. You cannot pay them, and there's no reward for them. The only reward is sense of purpose. And in my opinion, that sense of purpose is the most important fuel behind excellence. It's a very important part of what we want all people to have if we want them to deliver something on the basis of their knowledge, because Wikipedia must be written by people who know something really. So realize here the connection between knowledge and no sense of purpose, no Wikipedia. Wikipedia works only because there is knowledge and then that sense of purpose. So our grades in mathematics or physics and whatever you want enough. I think I show you it's also curiosity and passion. But even that is, in my opinion, not enough. And you should never believe that someone will be really an outstanding scholar if he only learns science. We believe that all kids who are learning science need also to learn way more than this. And they need to learn foreign languages, music, literature, history, philosophy. Because if you only teach sciences only, you're not going to get values out of it. Values are taught if you learn literature, music, philosophy, and more, and not only the science. So you need to have a package here that goes into together, but one cannot measure this package on the basis of exams that are testing the knowledge of these kids at the age of 18 when they're ending high school. That usually doesn't lead to what we will need in the next decades, when we don't really know where we're heading, and when new technology will change the world in a way that we cannot really predict today. So good students figure out how the system works so they can excel within the system. That's the usual system we work on. You have a system, kids excel into it, they have good grades, and you're happy. What I'm trying to claim is all success in the future does not come from working within the system. It comes from reinventing the systems. And what we want to do is to educate kids that can do that. Just to remind you, education's purpose is to replace an empty mind with an open one, not with a full one. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for passionate, inspiring speech. Please give another big round of applause for him. Next speaker, Natalie Seitz, Senior Advisor of Organizational Change of NASA Johnson Space Center. She is an expert in leadership, organizational change, and culture, employee engagement, in particular, building collaborative relationships in such big organizations like NASA. Okay, please, let's give a big welcome.
Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm learning a lot, and I just want to commend Daniel for an excellent speech. I learned actually a lot of things that he said. I think I'm going to repeat a few things, so I feel a little bit validated there as far as some of my conclusions. So hopefully that'll help as well with kind of the knowledge. I am not a physicist, as my two colleagues are here. My background is in human resources, and however, at NASA, I work with a lot of engineers, scientists, a lot of the technical astronauts, a lot of the technical folks, and so that is a real passion for me, is to work with the technical workforce. Oftentimes in human resources, people refer to the work we do as soft skills, and that's at least how they refer to it sometimes in America. And in reality, I contend that the people skills are very hard skills. They're very difficult skills, skills that you really have to learn and practice and work at. Because they do not come naturally. So as my old boss, Mike Coates, who was a former astronaut, he flew 3 times, he said, the most difficult things here at NASA are not the technical problems that we have or the technical challenges, but it's actually the people of, learning how to get the best out of the people and how to motivate them, how to inspire them, how to encourage them to do their best. So today my talk is about how do you build successful teams. As Daniel indicated, the idea of getting a really good education, and he kind of explained that whole kind of comprehensive education that one would need to attain. That's kind of the first step in the door of any big company. Now, the next really big step, if you will, or as you go through your career, is about how to become a successful team member. How do I become a team member that people want me to be on their teams? And then when you get to management, how do you develop a team? How do you actually form a team? So that's what I'm going to cover today. And oops, I pressed something there. I don't know how to take that off. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Whoever did that. Okay, so let me give a little, just a real high-level background about NASA. NASA is geographically dispersed. We have 10 centers across the United States, and I work at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. NASA as a whole has about 17,000 civil servant employees and probably about 60,000 contractors. Our budget is about $19.3 billion a year. That is 0.486% of the federal budget. There's a misconception that we actually receive a lot more, a lot higher percentage of the federal budget in the U.S., and that is not true. Once again, it's 0.486%. So NASA is all about teams. That's really what NASA is all about. If you look at the International Space Station, if you look at the space shuttle program that we have retired, the workforce is geographically dispersed and internationally dispersed as well. So a lot of the work is really about teams. And so we start off actually with really trying to explain to everyone what are the core values, really identifying those core values and sticking with those values, having the leaders talk about those core values. And as you can see, teamwork is one of the 4 top values at NASA. There are 4 core values at NASA. And there's safety, excellence, teamwork, and integrity. You need those things in order to work at NASA. And so teamwork I'm going to focus on because that's the purpose of my presentation today. NASA's most powerful tool for achieving mission success is a multidisciplinary team of diverse, competent people across all NASA centers, and I'll say and across the world. Our approach to teamwork is based on a philosophy that each team member brings unique experience and important expertise to project issues. So where we start off then, we really focus on those core values and emphasize those core values anywhere we can. But then we also talk about what's the mission. What is the mission and what are our top priorities? It's important for everyone in the organization to understand that when you are an employee in the organization, but then when your team, where is it that we're headed? And so at Johnson Space Center, our mission is that we want to be leaders in human spaceflight, and that's the area that we want to focus on. So we focus on looking at the top priorities would be to maximize the use of the International Space Station. We enable the success of the commercial crew companies, which is emerging over the last several years, developing Orion, which is the capsule that will be for future missions that goes along with the SLS, the Space Launch System that's being developed in Huntsville, Alabama, and then to build a foundation for human missions to Mars. And that's really kind of the overall goals. When we looked at the mission statement, we got employees involved with that, getting their input and asking them where we thought we should head as an organization. And I think that's also important as well. When you're asked to contribute or be part of a team that's going to talk about the mission, it's important that you understand that big picture and be able to contribute to those things that you're asked to do, not just the work you're doing in the lab or working on a particular engineering project, but then looking at the bigger picture and how do we kind of move forward as an agency. So I think that was something that was of benefit. We also try very hard to communicate the big picture. We talked a little bit about JSC and the leaders in human spaceflight, but we want to show this as a picture format. And we encourage all our employees when they go out to talk. A lot of them are asked to talk to elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, even the former colleges that they went to. And we give them information to take back to say, communicate the big picture and what we're trying to achieve. And we try to do that on one page. Because it's the other thing in the talk that I had earlier today, I talked about a 2-minute elevator pitch. Really understanding if you have a vision and mission of your organization, can you articulate that in 2 minutes? If you get on an elevator on the 11th floor or 12th floor with somebody and you're going to go down to the first floor, can you tell that person in that duration what is the vision and mission of the organization and how do you fit in that organization? So that's something as well to be thinking about, and can you actually do that effectively? So with that, we also talk about our expected behaviors. What are we expecting employees to do? Giving them kind of those rules of engagement, and how do we expect them to work together? And so this is something that, frankly, we were working on. We established after one of our two tragic shuttle accidents. It was after the Columbia accident. We spent quite a lot of time with the contractor leadership and the civil servant leadership talking about what are our expectations, because at Johnson Space Center we have 3,000 civil servant or government employees, and at the time when we had shuttle going, we had about 12,000 contractors. So the bulk of the team were the contractors, and what I mean by contractors are people that work like at Boeing or Lockheed or the different companies that form one overall team at NASA. So NASA, as I indicated, it's a team. There are just multiple teams at NASA. I mean, layer upon layer upon layer of teams. So the idea and the rules of engagement, and this is discussed on the employee's first day of work. I actually welcome the new employees at Johnson Space Center. That's one of the jobs that I do. And I talk with them at length about the expected behaviors. And then my boss, my current boss, Dr. Ellen Ochoa, she's also an astronaut. She speaks about this at all hands meetings when she meets with all the employees and talks about, reemphasizes these expected behaviors. So we're expecting everyone to be trustworthy, have an open mind, be accountable, be respectful, and be a key player. So you see on the sun where it says be a key player, we added that planet, if you will, or that star, I should say. We added that within the last 3 years. And the reason we did that is because people were looking at this poster and saying, oh, this only applies to management, that only the supervisors need to do this. And we said, no, we want to clarify that. Glad that we got that feedback, because we really want everyone to feel like they own these expected behaviors, and this is for everyone to actually exhibit. So we encourage all team members to be engaged, contributors, and develop solutions, and that's really kind of the expectation. So we also emphasize, once again, to talk about kind of recognizing the entire team. I'm sure many of you here, let's see, many of you, I don't know if you've heard of Humans of New York. Who has Humans of New York on their Instagram? Does anybody subscribe to that? I don't know if they have something similar here in Korea, but in America they have, it's on Instagram, and it's called Humans of New York. And there's somebody that came out with just interviewing various people that are in New York City, and it takes a picture, one picture, and tells a little story about them. And it's extremely popular in America. Everyone has this on their phone. And so what the team did here at JSC is our millennial generation, they came up with what's called Humans of JSC and of Humans of Johnson Space Center. And the idea is they want to take one picture of someone that's working in the workforce and tell their story, just a little paragraph about their story. And the idea is to kind of highlight everyone working at JSC or Johnson Space Center eventually by doing this kind of running catalog of the humans of JSC. And the reason that this is important is it's emphasizing that it's not only the astronauts that are important, but it's every single person working at JSC and how are they contributing to the mission. So I thought that was a very creative thing to do in order to recognize the entire team. And this just rolled out about a month or two ago. So as the whole role of leader is really changing. It's no longer the smartest person that becomes the boss. The smartest person technically is not going to be the boss necessarily. It's going to be someone that can actually lead and develop people, lead and develop teams. That is really critical to achieving complex problems. As you can see, Steve Jobs says, great things in business are never done by one person, they're done by a team of people. So as you enter the workforce, it's very important to figure out, how do I become that really good team member that people want me on their team? And then as you become a supervisor, how do I create teams? So basically, leaders are responsible for developing all employees so that make sure that they have an opportunity to succeed. And so we focus on training supervisors to give meaningful feedback. How do they do that on a regular basis? We try to prepare people what we call stretch assignments, meaning that, okay, I'm ready for this assignment that I have right now, but how do I prepare for that next level? What are some things that I can do that give you, they're taking a risk on you and allowing you to do that extra job, if you will, and that's called a stretch assignment. Mentoring employees, mentoring is very important, a very important function we have. When I was the HR director, we developed a program called YODA, which was, as you guys know from Star Wars, the little icon, Yoda. It's your opportunity to develop another. So that was the acronym, and we worked with Lucasfilms to use Yoda as our logo, and so that was kind of a catchy thing along the lines with a space theme. But we're also looking at coaching and encouraging a diverse set of candidates to apply for jobs. So not just saying, oh, well, there's a team lead job or there's a project lead job. I better not apply because I know so and so is going to get it or whatever. So we're trying to get that diverse candidate pool for people to apply and feel like they really have an opportunity and really are prepared for those things as well. So this was something that really resonated with me when Daniel said organizations kill innovation, and I think he's absolutely right. I think he's absolutely right. As organizations develop and as they grow, a lot of things come into conflict as far as cumbersome processes, and there's layers, and the modern day hierarchical organization is just no longer going to work, I think, in our society, and it's taken a long time. Very few people are really flattening their organizations. Very few organizations are. I mean, NASA still has a very much a hierarchy, and I think we're going to need to evolve and change that. So I absolutely agree with him. One of the things that our center director, previous center director talked about is that he was concerned that we had what's called a not invented here mentality, meaning that we were very insular, we only listened to ourselves, and we didn't look outside the gates of Johnson Space Center, outside the gates of NASA, and we needed to reach out to other industries, and industries that were not just aerospace, but other industries to get ideas. And how do we bring the influx of diverse perspectives into our workforce? And that's when we developed this journey, if you will, for a more of an open-minded, which leads to inclusion of ideas and people and different perspectives, which then encourages collaboration, which ultimately then sparks creativity and innovation. So that's really what we were looking at. And again, Daniel's point, the more complex of a problem you have, and the more diverse group of people you have solving it, you're going to end up with a better solution. And that's been proven time and time again. So that's something that we have continued to emphasize. As a manager or as a team lead in your organizations, I think it's really important to look for diverse opinions in your workforce. You know, as a leader, let's say you're the CEO and everybody agrees with you. I think that is a very dangerous situation to be in if all your direct reports agree with you. It really is, because you need people to say, stop, I think we're going the wrong direction, or we may want to consider this, or you may want to consider that. You know, I think it's very important to have that diverse diverse perspective. So really, I'm encouraging you to listen to those around you, and especially those who disagree with you. It's very hard to disagree with a boss. I totally recognize that. But I think it's important to build that trust so that you can bring up a better solution, or you really care about the outcome. Find value in everyone's opinion, and really seek out those that don't normally speak out. And so, you know, we have introverts and we have extroverts. We have extroverts that always have an opinion. They're ready to give their opinion, and then and that's good. I mean, they're trying hard. But the introverts sometimes really think through an issue. And I find that there's some brilliant ideas if you just give the introverts an opportunity to speak up. So you can try different strategies. I mean, just telling introverts speak up, that's not going to work. I mean, that's just really not going to work there. But if you you may try different strategies to say, okay, let's say it's a Friday, and you say, okay, on Monday or Tuesday of next week, we're going to have a staff meeting, and we're going to talk about X, Y, Z. This is what we're going to talk about. It gives people an opportunity to think through. The extroverts will never think about that problem between Thursday and Monday or Tuesday. They won't even enter their mind because they want to do it on the spur of the moment. That's how they think, and that's how they create their opinions. The introverts will think about that all weekend, and they will have well thought out answers and solutions. So that's what I mean about adapting to the styles and giving people a heads up so that they have an opportunity to think and actually contribute. So this is just really quickly a book that I thought was very good. It's that idea about having complex situations, and the more diverse group of people that you have, the better outcome. And so this book is written by Scott Page. It's called The Difference, How the Power of Diversity Creates Better Groups, Firms, Schools, and Societies. So I just encourage you to read it. It's something that we have encouraged all of our supervisors to read at JSC, and it's something that we've used as foundational kind of learning in our training and development area as well. Also, kind of getting back to the mission, I do want to talk a little bit about this idea that this concept that actually astronaut Peggy Whitson, who's pictured here in the far left corner, Peggy Whitson is scheduled to launch the next expedition flight, and she came up with this concept, it takes a village. And it does take a village, meaning that it takes a village to get an astronaut to space or to have anybody flying in space. The idea of trying to recognize that greater team and understand, once again, the whole idea of teamwork and team recognition. So you can see in the upper left-hand corner, she's meeting with a group of technical people talking about a particular issue. That's kind of what that is. In the middle picture, there is some cake. They're trying to celebrate her going off to Russia to train, and so she brought the team together, and they kind of celebrate together, and they're all preparing for her mission. There's a little kind of icon on the bottom. That's the logo that we use on the web page, and it's just continued on. You can follow her on Twitter, and there's other things on Facebook that talks about it takes a village. And so that's another way to kind of emphasize that overall greater team. So this is a picture of the 2013 astronaut class, the last class that we actually selected from. We had about 5,000 applicants, and we selected eight people, 4 women and 4 men, for the 2013 astronaut class. And we are going through a astronaut selection process right now, and I think there were crazy numbers of applications because everything was online now, and I think it was about 12 to 13,000 people that actually applied. So we'll see the outcome of that soon. But the reason that I brought this picture up is to talk a lot about, give you an example of what the astronauts do as well. They are going through, one of the first things they do when they get selected into the program is they go to land survival training. And they do this as a team. They are actually paired up in smaller teams, and they are learning how to survive with very limited materials. And this is held in Western Maine. They work together in small teams, and they're trying to learn navigation and survival skills. And so that's just another example, again, of trying to come up with something creative on how do you develop teams. So really, I want to give people time to ask questions. So I want to just kind of summarize, really, to build an effective team, really your teamwork should be grounded in the organization's value system. So it's important to know what the values are and really emphasize those. And at every opportunity, really try to communicate those as a leader as well. I think the organization's vision should be clearly communicated, and employees need to understand how they fit in the big picture. So really think about your current job that you have right now. I really want to challenge you to think of that 2-minute elevator speech. How would you describe your mission and your role in that mission of your particular company if you were just riding with a complete stranger on an elevator just for a really short distance? And I think it's really it's kind of thought-provoking and really interested. As if you're not working right now, if you're a student, I would challenge you to think about that elevator speech is, how can I sell myself in 2 minutes or less to a CEO that I might be in the elevator with? What could I say to that person that would show my uniqueness and show that I would be somebody that would add value to that company? So think about that. It takes quite a lot of thought to put that together, but I think it's well worth it. Also, an organization must really be mindful of its culture. I think continuing to look at the culture and figuring out where it needs to be improved. Culture is something that needs to be nurtured. It's not something that you just say, oh yes, this is our culture, and then you're done. But the culture evolves and it changes, and it has to adapt. If it's not adapting, this is another point you made, Daniel, about adaptation, that we have to be adapting to the environment. That was an excellent point, because culture cannot stay static. It has to be dynamic because things are changing, the environment's changing. NASA's changing because we have the influx of commercial companies now that are really developing that ability to go to space. They can take cargo to space right now, but they're really close to taking crew members to space as well. Also celebrate the team and really include all employees. That's very important to look at, not just individuals, while that's important, but it's not just saying, you know, person A did the best job out of this group, but let's celebrate the entire team's accomplishments. I think that goes a long way. And then lastly, recognizing the value of having diverse perspectives. That's really, really critical. And, you know, if you come to a group and you are the, let's say, the most diverse person there, and I'm not just talking about ethnic diversity, but I'm talking about perspectives of, you know, academia or, you know, military or corporation or private sector, public sector, that kind of thing adds to your diversity. And so when you find yourself in that role, feel like that is a strength. See that as a strength, because now you can bring a different perspective to that team that guarantee you bring those issues up, people will look at you and say, wow, I never thought of it that way. And that might end up leading to a much better solution. So I'm going to conclude now because I know we'd like to hear some of your questions. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Natalie. Yes. Okay, well, let's give another warm round of applause for her. With the cooperation of our speakers, we will have plenty of time for questions. So our staff is working around the floor, so you can pass your questions to them. Right. Oh my, so I can start with these questions. Perhaps this is for Daniel, I suppose. Daniel, what is your curiosity? Now.
No.
Yeah. Now. Yeah.
I think my curiosity is the same, actually, than the one that I had 20 years ago, 40 years ago, and even 50 years ago. I'm passionate about how things work. Mm-hmm. It's not enough for me. Actually, it's I get frustrated when I see things working and I don't understand why. Mm-hmm. So, you know, my memory goes back to, and it's still very, very, the way I work, goes back to the time when I, as a kid, I first got a radio with an antenna, you know, a little electronic transistor with an antenna. And I was amazed. I think I was exactly 12 years old at that time. That was my first radio in Belgium. And I really was frustrated by the way that you could have something which works on a battery, which is connected to nothing, and there's an antenna, and the music gets to the antenna to the loudspeaker. I mean, it's a miracle, right? I mean, how does that work? So I decided, I was 12 years old, that I wanted to understand this. I wanted to elaborate, and I took a book, 12 years old, on electromagnetic waves. I opened the book, and I was blown away. I understood nothing. I got frustrated. And I still do that. I still do that these days. I see things that I don't understand how it works. It doesn't matter what it is. I go. These days, as you know, you don't buy books anymore. You open the internet, and I go and read and read and read until I get the point. And I'm frustrated if I don't understand it. So my curiosity today is how things work. I think that's why I'm a physicist, actually.
Right. Do you have anything to say about your curiosity?
Sure. I guess my biggest curiosity is, will we actually land humans on Mars during my lifetime? I really hope to see that, as we kind of discussed a little bit earlier, but we will see. That's probably my biggest curiosity, and then probably my second one that's close to that is I'm curious how my kids are going to turn out. I have one of my daughters here, Elizabeth Seiss, who came with us, so she's here. Elizabeth, stand up real quick. So she.
Welcome.
That's my second curiosity.
So maybe your daughter can go to Mars. Yes. Natalie, this question is about the team. So when you are building a team or in a big organization like NASA, you may find a team member you don't want who makes all the troubles. So how are you going to lead?
That's a really excellent question. I'm so glad you brought that up because I have an example of that very question. Can you hear me okay? I'm going to move this over a little.
Yeah.
Okay. So there was about 15 years ago or so, I was asked to form this team that was going to be a very fast-paced. We had a short deadline team that a product that we had to deliver, and I was going around asking different people to be on the team, and I had thought through who I wanted on the team. And I asked this one person, I said, would you like to be on this team? These are the goals, blah, blah, blah. I went through the whole thing. And they said, I will be happy to, as long as so-and-so, person B, is not on that team. And I said, why is that? And they said, because that person will slow us down. They will ask too many questions. We're on a tight deadline. They will be the naysayers, the ones that are negative. They're the person that'll be negative. And so I will be on your team as long as that other person is not on the team. And my response to that person was, well, I honestly, no offense, but I want that other person on the team, and if it means not having you on the team, because that's what you need on a team. You need the diverse perspective, and you need people that are disagreeing with you. It may slow you down, but I guarantee you, when you're going to deliver that product or service or whatever it is, the very questions that person would bring up are going to come up then, and it may be too late to actually adjust. So you absolutely have to have diverse perspectives on your team, even if you feel like it's a problem or it's a big hassle.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything to add to this teamwork? You focus, Daniel, you focus more on individualism, right?
That's correct.
Individual spirits, character, passion of individual. What do you think of teamwork?
You know, my experience with teamwork is, you know, it's like and I use the term of percolation. For those physicists who know what I'm talking about, it is something which forms by itself. That's usually the best thing. That is, if you can find one leader, usually what will happen is that very automatically there will be additional people who would like to join in, and the organic growth from the bottom. I realize very often is the best way, but of course that would not work if you work in an organization like NASA, which has well-defined goals that are being set up by, you know, by the top level. It works very, very well if you work in a scientific institution where the goals are set up by the person themselves, and then you do try to provide a place for organic growth. So my experience is different than the one of Natalie, not because what she says is different than what I'm saying, just because we work in different type of organizations. So that's a different way of looking at a team building.
So he was talking about percolation. That's something perhaps non-physicists can understand. But it's more to do with the self-organization, right? Right. So he was talking about irony of quantum mechanics. You can measure, but you can destroy. So do you understand? All right. You said some of those secrets of the success of science education in Israel. So what will be the failures or weak points of your educational system you can share?
Well, and amazingly, I think the weak point are the same as the strong point. And that's, I think, by the way, I think that's the problem of many systems of education. If you have too much emphasis on one kind of education, then it's going to be your weak point as well. You know, in places where you tend to educate too much about knowledge and you measure everything about the ability to answer specific sets of questions and you calibrate the whole model, then you know, you have a big success in terms of answering questions, but you have big problems in terms of using this. I think our system is not good enough in terms of knowledge, actually. I'm worried about the fact that we are so low in this PISA rating. Again, I don't trust this too much, but still I regard this as an indication that we are not doing a good job at providing this type of knowledge. I can see that, for example, when I look at the gap which exists between the type of knowledge the kids have when finishing high school and the type of knowledge we require them to get into university. And the question, you know, this gap is a very interesting one to measure because the school system is one system and the university system is a different one. Usually in all countries they are set up and they are directed by different bodies. And the question is
if it's actually different, how is the gap being formed? Is there a big gap or a very small gap? Is the university system going down to the school system, or is the school system able to move up to the university system? And by measuring this gap, you can actually get an idea of what is happening in the education system without measuring anything. And what I observe is the gap is widening. We don't provide enough knowledge, really, to our kids, and the universities tend to move too low, and I'm worried about this.
Right. Or, Natalie, you said that it takes a whole village to educate person or people, right? So education has to be done not only in schools, but out of schools, at home. So what do you do to your daughter?
Well, I think there are different ways to kind of fulfill that broad range of education or opportunities. One thing that my husband and I have tried to emphasize is being involved with other activities. I know that that's not necessarily the same in the Korean culture, but we do. Elizabeth has been on the varsity soccer team in high school. This is her junior year, and she's been playing for quite a while. We believe that that really teaches people about teamwork and about commitment and dedication, and playing in a very, very cold weather in January and February. And believe it or not, it does get really cold in Houston during those 2 months. So doing things like that, being involved with a church or different things that they may be interested in. But going back to the workplace, and then just for everyone, I would say, try to be in college, try to be involved with some clubs, maybe join some clubs that you're passionate about. There's Engineers Without Borders, which I think is a wonderful organization that also teaches you teamwork, and you're solving a societal problem and looking at helping others that are less fortunate than perhaps you are. And so there's different ways to continue to develop your expertise, but also to learn how to work in teams.
So you are happy with the answer? All right, good. So, Daniel, so what are your thoughts on this? Education at home, chutzpah.
I think we, while we used to believe that the school system was responsible for the education of our kids, I think this is changing, and family have a huge role to play. I mean, perhaps even more important than the school, even though we tend to say that all kids spend more time at school than at home because parents work and they come back late and they leave early. But as you know, the time is not the issue, it's what you do with the time you have. And that has become very much important. And I very much agree with the fact that we need to have our kids engage in society issue outside of the school. Getting them to give their time for free to issue, which is outside of the curriculum of the school, will teach them a lot about working in teams, about social responsibilities, about using what they've learned to do something quite early. And we have to engage our kids quite early in doing these type of things, because it's not enough they sit in school in the classroom, they learn all these materials, they go and write or do the homework. Social engagement at early stage teach them a lot, way more than actually, in my opinion, what they do at school. So the family, of course, is the only place when you can push our kids to do that, because it's not the job of the school.
Is that also what you are trying to do at Weizmann? Trying to break out of the box thinking? Breaking out of the box thinking? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think we specialize in trying to pick up people like this, but we, just to give you an idea, we try to convince our students to give their time to teach in schools for free, by the way. And a lot of them would do that. They're busy doing their PhDs, but because we are so much engaged and so much involved in science education, we find a lot of our students willing to go into schools and teaching kids or helping kids to do the homework. But you would think you get a PhD students helping kids to do that, and you should see the result of it. It's an engagement that pays off a lot. It might not make the research moving forward, but it makes the people moving forward. And that's, what more important, perhaps.
Right. There are many questions, but I'm trying to address as much as I can. This is a question about the kind of teamwork. In your team, you have a person with, say, less of reward, okay? who may feel like say failures, for example. So then, but he may look like a failure, but he may be a successful person later on. So how do you keep and encourage them in the team? And that's one question. And another is that so a kind of work balance. In your team, you have a diverse group of people who works hard, who works more, and there are people who work less. So how do you balance them?
These are good questions. I think that it takes that team leader to kind of be in touch with each individual person. Not only having group meetings and working on the project, if you're working on a specific project, but having individual meetings and talk to each of the team members. Do they feel like they're able to contribute? Do they need more help? Or are there issues that perhaps the team lead's not aware of? So you still need the one-on-one interaction with your team lead or your supervisor so that you know kind of how things are going. And you don't want to keep someone in the team that is completely feeling like they either can't contribute or what have you, but I would not give up too soon. I would try to figure out a way that you can assign them things that would make them feel like they're accomplishing something. I think when you are a team lead as well, yes, naturally, for some people to take more responsibility than others, but you can try to mitigate that by assigning different things. So as a team lead, you can say, okay, I'd like you to do this, and I like this other person to do that, and you assign tasks and you assign deadlines so that then everyone feels like they have something that they're contributing, and then that feeling of I don't want to let my team down will start kicking in and people have to deliver a product. And if they're not delivering on their milestones, then that's when you have to counsel them individually.
Okay, here's an interesting question. NASA has a plan to acquire SpaceX.
Well, I'm definitely not qualified to answer that, but I do not believe that is true. I do not believe that Elon Musk would allow that.
All right, so no. Okay.
Maybe Elon Musk wants to acquire NASA, but we'll see.
Right. Well, you have to work together to be able to reach Mars, fast.
Well, it'll be a cooperation. Not one entity will go to Mars. It'll have to be an international cooperation, most likely.
Right. So this is a question to Daniel, I think. But in your slides, what can you do to adult learning? Can you answer a question like that?
Adult learning?
Yeah. So this one is from HR team in a private company. So some of you said can be adapted to, say, corporate training, for example.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you?
Well, you talked about a lot of things, and so curiosity, passion, and all this critical thinking, and all these things. But can you be extended to outside the domain of, say, science?
In terms of education?
In terms of education and training and human resource development in companies and
all my life I spent in science and science education, so I don't like to speak about things I don't know. So I usually, as a scientist, I try to base my conclusion on data. That's why I have data. Other things I don't have data, I can have an intuition, but I don't think it's right. One thing I've learned in terms of getting the right people to do things is not to look for people looking for a job, but rather looking for people who look for responsibility. And that is something which is very human and has nothing to do with education. It is valid, in my opinion, in all fields. Again, you have all these people with huge knowledge, but they can be very useless if they are not willing to take responsibilities and put this forward. So, but as far as education, really my field of expertise is really in the science. And don't ask me how to teach history in a better way. I wouldn't know.
Well, then pass the mic to Natalie. Can you?
Latin?
No, Natalie.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Right. So Natalie, who can be a good leader? So do you think we can develop leadership qualities by training?
Yes, I think so. I think there has been a common misnomer or perception that leaders are born. You've probably heard that many times, but honestly, I do think that leadership can be taught and worked on and developed. It does take self-awareness. I think the person that is trying to become a good leader needs to be self-aware, meaning that they need to understand their strengths and their weaknesses, and they need to be able to work on those and work on them very systematically and get feedback. It's very important as leaders to get feedback, to seek feedback from everyone. And you can do that anonymously through surveys, or you can do it, ask somebody else to go around collecting information, specific questions about your leadership skills, or if you have good trust built up with those particular people, you can ask them. So it's something that you work at and you work at doing well. And I do think you can be taught. And the whole inclusion and innovation kind of, we really struggled with that, and we decided that was a leadership competency, and so we labeled it as such, and then we did a lot of training and development around an inclusion and innovation competency so that we can spark that a little bit more into the workforce.
Okay. If you have more questions, you can pass your questions to the staff. Okay. So Daniel, this is another question about the education. So the curriculum at Weizmann. I mean, so is there? I also even nowadays trying to change the curriculum, adapt to the changing environment right now.
So remember that the Weizmann Institute is a graduate school
Yeah.
only, so this is not about education of kids 15 to 18, but rather at people who have an undergraduate in one of the scientific fields, be that mathematics or computer science or physics, chemistry, biology, life science in general. I'll tell you something, we don't have a fixed curriculum. Actually, we have a completely dynamic curriculum which is based on the scientists we have on campus. And I think that's a very important point. I mean, we don't try, at the graduate level, you don't try to teach a program. We believe that those who are experts in the field they're working in, they've been researchers in that field for years, are the best people who can teach whatever needs to be taught. So we don't have an exact curriculum which goes along, like you have an undergraduate, where it is, by the way, important to have, still need to be adapted all the time, but we have a very dynamic curriculum which is mostly based on individuals who teach. And by the way, that's another interesting thing. There are no, at the Weizmann Institute, we have about 250 scientists. There's no, teaching is not compulsory. So professors don't need to teach, yet most of them are teaching. And it's quite an interesting phenomenon. And the reason most of them are teaching is first because, as I say, they're passionate about what they're doing. And when you're passionate, you want others to be as well. I mean, it's very human, so you want everyone else. And that's the best teaching you can dream of, even if they're not good teachers by definition. Because they're passionate about it, other people will come. And the second thing is they know that if they want to build a team, they better teach the students what they're doing, because that's the only way they're going to come to them. So it's a very interesting back and forth dynamics. But the curriculum changes all the time as a function of the type of science you're doing. It has been really moving over the years in a dramatic way. So it adapts itself automatically. And we have quality controls and everything, but still it is very much dynamic.
Another question for Daniel is that you mostly focused on students, in the prospective students, but this question is, how do you motivate professors to perform better? Who do you hire? How do you educate them?
Well, I don't think I educate professors. I mean, that's not my job. I'm a professor myself. I would not dare to educate anyone else. I mean, I think that's really not something I can do. I don't think you can motivate professors. I think they can motivate themselves. And the question is, what do you provide as an infrastructure, as an environment, as a landscape, so that they will provide their own motivation? And by the way, true motivation really, especially in scientific research, come from inside. I mean, the reason it comes from inside is because the goals are not set up by the organizations, but the goals are set up by the scientists themselves. So what you need to do is to indicate to these individuals that they have the right, the freedom, the need, in fact, to define their own goals. And if excellence is present, and I said excellence is not just a measure by something, but it's a complex idea. And I always say when you see excellence, you recognize it. I mean, that's very clear to us. And whatever their goals they've set up, if you see excellence, you're going to support it. And that drives usually their passion and their curiosity about what they want to achieve. So it's not about convincing them to be better. It's really to provide them the infrastructure so that they can release their energy, if you want, in the system and go. And that usually works, but it doesn't work 100% of the time. It is true, at some point, people in this business, which is a very hard business that needs to you need to reinvent yourself all the time. At some point, some of these individuals they dry up. They are not anymore able to provide new type of ideas that we're expecting, and that's nature. You have to cope with it. That's part of the high-risk, high-gain business you're running, and some of the people will not deliver these new ideas, and you have to agree that they will be within your system, and it's fine. I mean, it's okay.
All right, thanks. I have a few more questions for the remaining time. This is a question I had myself. This is a question from Hyunju Kim. And you saw certainly the movie Martian, right? So there's a team, right, of astronauts, right? How do you evaluate them, this team, as a NASA human resources, expert? Did they well? I mean, what's the problem?
Well, actually, all of the crew members, when they come back from space, they are evaluated as a team. They're actually evaluated by not the Human Resources Office. We have people that are PhDs in psychology, psychiatry. We have the medical doctors. The medical doctors are actually the panel that does the evaluation. So they have evaluations as how they operated as a team and how they operated individually as a team. So they get feedback as well, and they get feedback on what was working and what was not working. I mean, it's a very harsh environment. It's very difficult. I mean, just imagine being with, 4 or 5 people, and you're in let's just say in a confined space for, even with a shuttle mission, for a couple of weeks. I mean, that gets really hard to do. I can't think of, even my own family, whom I love so much, I don't know if I could be in a closed environment with them for 2 solid weeks. It definitely weighs on you, I think, mentally and physically. So they are evaluated, but it's really done by our medical officers. As far as the Martian, that really is a great movie. I hope you all see it. We invited Andy Weir, who was the author, out to Johnson Space Center to come and talk with our group. And he did come out with his parents. But an interesting tidbit is he does not like to fly. So he came by train because he does not like to take airplane rides. So I thought that was fascinating.
Right. This movie Martian, is there any, implications for science education, Daniel? Or?
I
don't know about the movie. So I can't tell you.
Right.
Well, I encourage you to read the book because it's an excellent book. The book is better than the movie, but I always find books are better than movies. Yeah. But I'll send you a copy, Daniel.
Right. The actor was right. The actor was a scientist, in fact. Okay. Yeah. So he had to solve. He has asked questions.
The last book I read was about electromagnetic waves.
Well, let me just say really quickly that a lot of the people that read this, the scientists and engineers that read The Martian, feel that it was very technically accurate from a physicist perspective and science perspective. So I think you'll enjoy it.
All right. I also recommend you. All right. Okay. Well, we are almost up. Let's see. Well, so the main question in this session, actually Daniel raised was, are we actually most prepared to change for the future? So certainly the ideas and examples discussed in this session give us some insights into our future society and educational change that will affect us and the mankind. So we are ready to rethink the goal of the education system, the change of the culture of the society, where the curiosity, passion, and critical thinking, along with the teamwork, are prominent and should be relevant. So certainly, as she said, it takes ability to educate person, and we need to build a society with a culture to listen to those who disagree with you. So I totally agree with you in this aspect. So, well, thank you for staying with us until the end of this session. I'd like to thank Daniel and Natalie for their time and efforts to finish sharing their knowledge and bring up all these issues. Let's give a big